Local attorneys and community advocates are bracing themselves for a second Donald Trump presidency. The president-elect says he'll carry out the largest deportation operations in U.S. history, even promising to use the military to help that effort. Trump's claims that he plans to target sanctuary states and cities are causing anxiety and even panic. Here with more on how local groups are preparing are Carla Casas, attorney with Casas Immigration, and Nubia Willman, Chief Programs Officer of Latinos Progresando, and on Zoom, Jose Vera, Executive Director of Southwest Suburban Immigrant Project. Thank you all for joining. Carla, I want to start with you. What has it been like? Have you seen an influx of calls of people calling you and trying to figure out what they should do? What does that look like?
We've definitely heard from a lot of our clients that, of course, are worried. How is this going to impact their case? What they should expect? So we definitely have seen that, and we were expecting it. So we've been prepared. I've made videos for my clients, just kind of letting them know these are the things that, that may happen. At the same time, we don't know until we know.
And how are you preparing them? What does that look like? What's the advice you give them
now? It depends on the type of case they have. There are certain things that are more in danger, that are easier for the Trump administration to get rid of, things that are not in law, right? Things that are under executive order. So I've been, analyzing all of our cases to see which situations are more at risk, and with those clients, we want to kind of act quickly.
So you're bracing yourself.
Yes.
Nubia, going to you, we've seen a Trump administration before. What are your organization's takeaways from 2016 that it is using to prepare?
Well, we're using the lessons learned in 2016 to make sure that we have a community response plan. And so there's lots of folks on the ground that are working to make sure communities are informed, that they know their rights, and that they're able to then connect with licensed attorneys and accredited DOJ reps so that they're able to file cases if necessary. And in any event, make sure they have all the documents that they need to prepare in case anything happens, if they do in fact have to have an interaction with ICE.
And as we know, former ICE Director Tom Homan, named as a border czar, says he intends to enforce strict deportation policies and specifically targeting sanctuary cities and states. What does this mean for Illinois and Chicago, for people who are trying to understand?
Of course, and so we are a sanctuary, we're a welcoming state, we're a welcoming city, and there are federal laws that protect us with our due process and our rights. And so this is a moment for our government officials to underscore that they're going to follow the law, both through the Trust Act, our welcoming city ordinance, and that federal officials will also follow the law. Just because someone becomes president doesn't mean that the laws change. And so this is really a moment for us to say, we're going to defend our communities, we're going to defend our rights, and that's across the board for both immigrants and citizens that live in this country.
Have you also seen a panic among people?
There's definitely a concern. I think there's a little bit of a disconnect from 2016 because so many things were promised and didn't happen. But we are also entering a second administration understanding that folks may now know which levers to pull to be a little bit more efficient, and so we want to be prepared.
And Jose, I want to bring you in. Your organization is currently putting together a Know Your Rights curriculum. What plans should families have in place if they are separated?
Yeah, so we want to make sure that we are acknowledging that there's real fear and anxiety amongst the community, but we're not powerless, right? And there are certain rights for everyone living in the U.S., especially here in the state of Illinois. We have built significant safeguards, so we want to make sure we're educating people on what those safeguards are around the Illinois Trust Act, making sure that folks understand that they don't have to open the door if a nice agent knocks on their door. So we want to make sure that we're getting out and we're gearing up these presentations at our local churches, schools, to make sure that our community understands their rights.
And Carla, Trump has made claims that he plans to use the military to help execute his mass deportation plans. How probable is that?
I think that it's going to be logistically and legally very difficult for him to do that. We know that Trump tends to kind of throw out things, fly by the seat of his pants, in terms of doesn't think through always, right, logistically and legally. I think it would be very problematic. We have federal law that makes clear that the military is not to be used to enforce domestic laws domestically. So that would be the first issue. I think there would be a lot of lawsuits filed immediately if he were to do that. And then even logistically, money-wise, I mean, I've heard it's going to be in the billions of dollars to be able to do this. So even from that perspective, it would be very difficult to actually accomplish that.
And Carla, what impact does it have knowing that the Republican Party has control over the Senate and the House and the Supreme Court? Does that have an impact?
You know, we're still looking at, again, we have federal law. This has never happened before in our country. So even the Republicans that may be more willing to, you know, let's put some troops at the border, but now we would be talking about, you know, our military coming into our cities, into our towns and enforcing immigration law, which they're not prepared to enforce because they're not trained to do that. So I think even that, even though, you know, obviously they have a majority, I think even still it would be a very difficult sell. And, you know, Congress would have to act because we do have laws that make very clear that that's not something that can legally be done.
And Jose, how can people hold our government officials accountable to protect immigrants?
Yeah, so you know, we encourage people to join community-based organizations. We know that here in the state of Illinois, the governor himself has said that he will stand, you know, and they will have to come through him in order to get to our community. So we're going to make sure that we hold them accountable to that, because we do need to make sure that our communities are protected.
And Nubia, there have been situations in the past where law enforcement agents executed workplace raids. Should we be concerned about this time around?
You know, what I think is important is that folks understand that though we're a welcoming city, welcoming state, the federal government still has jurisdiction to do their role, which includes doing raids if necessary, and really depends on the appetite of the federal administration as to when they do that. So we probably should anticipate workplace raids and an increased presence of ICE as well if this goal of mass deportation is supposed to happen. And I do want to mention that in 70 years ago, we did see Operation Wetback, so there is some historical facts that this has happened before, but I do think that now that we're committed to really supporting immigrants in our community, we have to be responsive and be prepared for what may happen.
And Carla, why is it a cause for concern for everyone, not just immigrants?
I mean, I think, you know, this is going to affect on every level in our communities, right? If we have individuals that are in fear, that are, you know, it's our neighbors, it's our, you know, children in our schools. This is not an insulated issue. This is something that is going to impact in a large way, right? Everyone.
What are your thoughts on what she's saying?
I agree, and I think that's one of the things. I think it's very easy to disconnect yourself from this issue and think this is only going to impact the 500,000, 500,000 immigrant refugees that live in Chicago or that live throughout the state. But the idea is that when someone is being stopped and engaging with an ICE agent, they don't know if you're a citizen or not. And so we really have to think about, is this a space where we want to be, where we all are going to have to show our papers, because that's the trajectory they're heading us towards if this comes into fruition.
So it affects different aspects of
Absolutely.
different communities. And Jose, we hear a lot of conversation about the economic troubles we could face if Trump executes this mass deportation that he claims. What else is at stake?
So, you know, there's the real fear and anxiety, right? We work in our local school districts with parent mentors, and there's already, you know, conversations about, you know, parents sending their kids to school. So this is going to have a big impact, right? Not just economic, there's also the humanitarian side of it, and it's going to impact our entire community.
And Carla, we have time for one last question. Should people with green cards applying with citizenship continue that process?
Absolutely, after speaking with an attorney, because, you know, we have to remember that people with green cards, some of them may not, if they have certain criminal convictions, they have to be careful before applying. But those who are eligible, absolutely. This should not stop them. Nothing has changed right now, and that's what I keep reminding my clients in general. There's been a lot of threats that we're going to get rid of this or that. Right now, that has not happened, and so we want to take advantage of the options that we have right now.
So they should continue to push through.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.